Hi, I'm Dr. Scott.
And I'm Dr. Shiloh.
And this is LA Not So Confidential, the forensic psychology and true crime podcast.
Each episode, we explore the intersection of psychology, the criminal justice system, and entertainment.
Welcome behind the couch. Today's live stream conversation features us. We bring you true crime stories in the news from mid-March. We cover new Maura Murray investigation news, Slenderman offender updates, and the Zizian Cult.
Hi, everybody. Happy
Hi, everybody.
Saturday. It's just us. No guests today.
So much fun when we realized that.
I know. We were
panicked
no
about
pressure.
not having a guest that we had planned to come on. And I was like,
Right.
Oh my gosh, this is so cool. This is like sort of almost like an extended shrink wrap, except we have a little bit more prep.
Totally. And yeah, I don't know. I get very nervous and all over the place when we have guests still, as long as we've been doing it.
Really? You do not come across that way at all. I think it's the pressure because you handle so much of the prep and the emails and stuff. What's so funny, folks, is that we have an
Shiloh does all the work. That's what's hilarious. No,
yeah, that's hilarious. She's incredibly patient, and all of my lottery winnings will go to her when I pass.
Yay!
There you go. We were supposed to get interviewed on somebody else's show,
right?
Which seems to be like that's our place in the world. Is that we don't make any money. We just get interviewed on a gazillion shows. But his directions were quite strident.
I know. Yeah. Like,
do not use Bluetooth. I'm like, hey, you're yelling at me through your font size. Please calm down.
He is very well organized and I appreciate it.
That's true.
I know. I'm always like, I'll send you instructions. And then hours before I'm like, here you go. No, that's not true. That's not true. But we will be back next month with a guest. We'll be interviewing a director of a documentary that we had the pleasure of going to the premiere screening and seeing and hanging out with our friend John Lorden because he's featured in it. So we do have guests lined up for like the next few months. So this feels good. This was actually really, really good timing. So yep, you just get us and some freaking banana stories of what the hell's going on right now to distract you from anything else that's going on right now. We do have a few Patreon members, new Patreon members since our last conversation a couple weeks ago with Jason. So we wanted to welcome at the associate level, Portia S., Sean Marie T, and David D. Thank you guys so much for joining the family. And I don't mean that in a cult way. We're going to be talking about cults in a second, but thank you for joining LA Not So Confidential fam, and happy to have you, above the associate level at intern and doctorate. You guys get onto our Discord and some other good perks. We'll send you some goodies in the mail, along with, of course, these shout outs to welcome new members, which goes to everybody now because we put these on the regular feed. So everyone gets to hear your name, not just on, YouTube's. What else? We got our meetup next month, April. Yeah. Actually, in audio form, this will drop in April, so it may have already happened by then, but we're looking at April 11th. We are doing just a casual come and hang out meetup at the Bike Shed in downtown Los Angeles in the Arts District. So if you're watching this live right now, please make your arrangements if you want to come down and say hello. All right, what else? What else we got?
I think that's it.
All right.
We recorded this morning, so we were covering upcoming things. So no, we have a couple of other live event things happening late spring into the summer that we'll talk about, another tour or another meetup, but we'll give more details of those as they develop.
Yeah, I am going to flip a little bit around, Scott, and I'm actually going to start with the Maura Murray update just because I think it's going to be a little shorter. But, I subscribe to James Renner's podcast, just true crime. Oh, God. True crime of the week. Sorry, James. I am totally blanking on the name of the show, but he covers big stories weekly. And this week he just focused on, of course, the Maura Murray case, which he knows inside and out.
True crime this week.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. He just focused on this because something new has come up recently, and, we don't really have a lot new come up with her case. So I know he's always a go-to to do some digging there. And I saw that he just released a new episode like 2 hours ago. So it looks like he might have a little bit more to add, but I have not listened to that yet. So with that, and I will link his YouTube where he covers this if you want a little bit more of a deep dive. So a fingerprint that was found in Maura Murray's car the night she disappeared has now been linked to a West Point cadet, fellow West Point cadet of hers, named Stephen Baldwin, who was very recently sentenced to 15 years in prison on totally unrelated charges earlier this week. So this name is not new, and one of the state troopers who was investigating the Maura Murray case, I think from a cold case perspective, like not at the time that it happened, said that this guy had been his number one suspect for a really long time. So pretty interesting, but let's go through this a little bit and then we can kind of see if this feels like it makes sense or if it's a red herring or what. But Stefan was a human. No, he wasn't a human agent. He was a humane agent. And that was
as opposed to a non-human agent, right?
Yes. Oh God, live. I almost thought we were recording and I was going to be like, let me start that again.
I know we jammed a lot into today. So there you go.
We did. So his job title was humane agent, and he investigated animal cruelty cases. And aside from sort of that official job in the community, he also had a private business that rehabilitated abused animals or animals that had like significant behavioral issues, with the goal to either get them back on track, AKA, dog whisperer style, or to rehome them eventually. However, after doing this for quite some time, the dogs began to disappear. And it turns out he was euthanizing them. And when the funding ran out to make space for new dogs, he would kill them. He would sometimes tell the owners they were doing just great. And then maybe they had, died under some other circumstance. But he had done this over and over. He had actually left doing it in Ohio and had fled to California, where they finally tracked him down, where he started doing it again. Once he was arrested for all this, when extradited back to Ohio, of course, his prints were taken. And that's when the hit came back to this print that had been found in Maura Murray's car. So Maura and Stefan went to West Point together. They had some sort of romantic relationship before she had met her other more well-known boyfriend, in this case, Bill Rausch. And Stefan was also her student advocate when she faced those theft charges that actually resulted in her choosing to leave West Point. Within her leaving, he also left and withdrew within a week. And so they were no longer West Point students after that. And, we know she had a little downtime, and then she decided to pursue her nursing program at UMass. And according to Stefan, he never saw her again after West Point. Like, they didn't hang out afterwards, or, I don't know what his college life was afterwards. But
and do we know what that span of time is?
I don't remember. I mean, I think it's a matter of months, but I'm not sure how long before she, applied and enrolled in that program. I imagine it would have been, a handful of months, but I don't remember off the top of my head. Interestingly, some character descriptions of Stefan is that people have described him as a sociopath. They've used that word. They said he's been very abusive in relationships and prone to bouts of mania, meaning he would, like, even when he was running this business, take off, leaving the dogs, and like drive hours and hours and hours to go visit someone, that sort of behavior.
Impulsive and a lot of energy.
Yeah, totally.
Irritability. So
he was coming up on a court hearing this week, and James Renner went out there because I believe James is in Ohio as well. And he got the chance to actually speak with him. He was standing outside the courtroom and decided to talk. And he said that the fingerprint that he had been previously investigated by the FBI about it, I'm assuming, right when those prints came back, and that his fingerprint was found on a CD in her car. And he said, yeah, like, we used to trade CDs back and forth in college, which totally makes sense. I mean, that absolutely tracks.
Yes.
I thought it was really interesting that he used the term in college, because if he didn't see her after West Point, people at West Point don't really refer to West Point as college, right? I know 3 kids who have recently gone there and graduated. Like, it's not like, hey, we're in college. So that's interesting language that makes me think, like, did they hang out afterwards? But he told Renner that he had never been in her car. He never saw her after he left West Point, and that he didn't even know about her disappearance until he saw it on like some TV news segment at some point. So it was interesting because Renner then sat in, it sounds like, on the sentencing hearing where the victim impact statements were made. And there were some further descriptions. And obviously, these are by victims of his crimes against these animals. But they were saying that using terms like psychopathic tendencies, no empathy for humans or animals, a master manipulator, a total con man, a lot of that language. So,
Wow.
it's like, what do you do with this? Like, of course, there's probably a ton of different fingerprints on those CDs. He had not been in the system before, but he had this romantic link with her at some point. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, I want to be fair about this, and I'm just glad that more information has come up.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was going to be more salacious, I'd say, holy crap, there's a lot leaning in that direction. There's like, again, like you and I talk about this all the time about like, what do you bring to the table when you are pursuing legal action or when you're pursuing adjudication? And just because somebody is a psychopath doesn't mean that they were a psychopath in that situation. We don't know.
Right.
But there are some odd things. I mean, there's this whole case has been odd from the beginning. There are so many things that have been odd, but the fingerprint, yeah, it could be in there. Could it have been there for months because it was on a CD and it was untouched by that person? Possibly. But I think that if nothing else, I love that there's more interest because interest wanes over time. And Tim and Lance and everyone who were followers and fans of their show have done an amazing job over the years of keeping this alive.
And Julie brought so much more to it again.
Completely.
With her TikTok presence and her own show about her sister's disappearance. And yeah, my thought is that exactly, like keeping it in the forefront. But also I thought, well, thank God they did a thorough enough job that they got fingerprints. They printed every CD in that car because you don't know. Like, this could very much be something that they want to give a little bit more attention to. And now he's behind bars, so he can't go anywhere. So at least they have sort of some time to play with this and go back and talk to him or investigate further.
So one thing I will say, I don't know if that's a legitimate connection of him to Maura's car at all.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But what you and I know about risk factors is if all these collaterals are saying this is a bad person, this is somebody that has these qualities, these characteristics, and they're harming animals. I mean, that's factual, right? That's all been, that's part of his current sentence. That's not a good combination.
Very true.
That says a lot right there. Don't know if it's connected to Maura's disappearance, but that is something that cannot be minimized, and nor should it be minimized at all.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, to be continued. I guess we'll see where this leads. But of course, as always, our thoughts are with the family and Maura's friends and the survivors who are here that have to catch their breath and not sleep every time, something new comes up, but also, right, knowing that they're grateful that there's attention again given to the case. So we have another case that has an interesting update that you found earlier this week as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've been fascinated with this, as most of our listeners will know. I've mentioned it since we started, really, because I've always found this particular case to be an overlay with my interest in horror. And then, of course, horror movies were made from this. We're talking about the Slenderman case. I'm sure everyone's familiar with it, but back in 2014 in Waukesha, Wisconsin, two 12-year-old girls, Morgan Geyser and Anissa Wire, lured their friend Peyton Leutner into a wooded area and then stabbed her 19 times in an attempt to appease or gain favor from a fictional character called Slenderman. Leutner luckily survived the attack after crawling to a nearby road where she was found by a cyclist who never took that path. That's the thing that is like an absolute wild, wild, serendipitous occasion. He just decided that morning he was going to change his route. He got her to the hospital or got the emergency services there. She underwent life-saving surgery. She's alive today. But it brought up a lot of controversy about perpetrators and the ages and the dynamics in kids, because we don't really think of children as having the more severe end of the spectrum of diagnosis in the DSM. And the perpetrators, Morgan Geyser, was later diagnosed when in care with early onset schizophrenia. So early onset schizophrenia, especially for women, is quite rare. And some of the indicators out there, information that's not like, I can't find this in research journals or verified, but that the parents were a little hands off with both of these kids. Geyser was found not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect and sentenced to 40 years to life in a mental institution. Again, as Dr. Shiloh and I have discussed many times, that is a very, very rare diagnosis. But just this year in January 2025, a court approved her appeal for release after experts reported significant progress in her treatment. Then last month, in February, her release plan was canceled due to new allegations from the treatment facility, including claims that she sent a man artwork of a violent nature. So now there's a new hearing to consider whether her release should be revoked. It's pending. That's a very big deal. It's a very, very big deal. There are also a couple of other famous cases that Dateline's podcast is covering right now. One of an eerily similar thing where a young woman was stalked by not even a boyfriend, just a family friend. And he brutally, brutally ended her life, was put in a psychiatric facility because of the nature of his psychosis. And he just drew and journaled incredibly violent imagery, and yet was somehow found to be innocent and released. And now there's a huge case. The case actually just got dismissed against the psychiatrist and the psychologist. But in listening to it, it's interesting. I mean, you and I are sort of a newer generation of forensic psychologists, and this was like the old school people.
Interesting.
Like, I don't think that if I was faced with a case like that, if someone is still expressing themselves in that violent way, you can't frame it in terms of, oh, well, this is my artistic expression. This is how I cathect, which is an old psychodynamic term. This is how I let go of those impulses. It doesn't work like that with people who are prone to violence. In fact, it creates euphoric recall and a number of other sort of self-stimming experiences. So I wish the best for Morgan, for Miss Geyser. Having that diagnosis at such an early age is a burden you wouldn't wish on anyone.
Sure.
However, I think that in this example, I think this is very important that they were like, whoa, let's put the brakes on this.
Absolutely.
And figure it out.
Yeah. Now, at least to just see what's what, right? Like further assessments needed.
Absolutely.
Let's explore this a little bit more. How interesting that she did this right before, right? Even if just you're looking at problem solving, impulsivity, not insight. Necessarily like, total insight. Yeah. You know, this is interesting. So I was down in San Diego County teaching a block during a training for crisis negotiators this last week. And I did a piece on like the most common mental health disorders we see out there on suspect barricades or with suicidal subjects, and just not wanting to turn cops into people who are doing diagnoses, but like psychotic, mood, and anxiety. Like, let's just break these down and what to look for as an observer, and then some do's or don'ts when it comes to negotiations. And then I had a gentleman come up to me afterwards, and he was the sworn half of, you know, the co-responders that are out in the field. So he rides with a mental health clinician, and they respond to a lot of any facility or school or entity having to do with kids. And he was really interested. He's like, so I hear a lot of kids telling me they're hearing voices and seeing things. He's like, because he's like, you told me what age this kind of starts. And so it's interesting to say, like, certainly it can happen. But if you're hearing it a lot, these kids aren't all running around with schizophrenia. Right. Why are they telling you this?
Right. And it's also depending on the context and the situation where law enforcement or mental health is involved, and you're talking to an individual, especially a youngster, youths as you were, and they're saying that they're hearing voices, you have to discern. So it's part of the diagnostic process. Well, what do the voices sound like? Oh, it's like me talking to myself. So sometimes people aren't educated on the difference between having an internal dialogue
Totally.
versus hearing an actual auditory hallucination, which is a different chemical and organic process within the brain.
Yep.
Interestingly enough, what the studies are now showing, which is fascinating to me, that the majority of auditory hallucinations experienced by people in other countries are not malicious. And almost all of the auditory hallucinations experienced by people in the Western cultures like the US are command to either do things, bad things, or are malicious or
What?
saying critical, abusive things using curse words. But the
Sure.
majority of other countries don't express it. And the theory behind it is because that's how stressed out America is and has been historically. Our levels of
That
stress are so much higher.
is wild. That
Right.
is really wild. Wow. Okay. We need to follow that, see what else comes out about that.
I know. Oh, well, so just tidying this up. So Anissa Weier was also found not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect, and she was sentenced to 25 years to life in a mental institution. She was released in 2021 under strict conditions, including 24-hour GPS monitoring and supervision until age 37, which is pretty wild.
Interesting.
In September 2023, the monitoring equipment was removed, but her internet usage remains restricted and monitored. I find this very, very interesting because in the situation, in comparing the two of them, Morgan versus Anissa, they're feeling very strongly about her. Like, this is somebody who probably programmed very, very well. And probably, I would go so far as to say, again, I don't know, one of our really first episodes was on othe.
Right.
And there is a lot of speculation that maybe her diagnosis of not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect was either situational psychosis or brief psychotic episode or othe. I mean, othe is a delusional disorder. You don't really see that in children, but that shared delusion, especially if Morgan was really strong in the beliefs and she was the driving force between the two of them, Anissa could have, by emotional and intellectual osmosis, have taken that on.
Yeah.
So the good news in all of this is that Anissa seems to be on the mend, which is good. But even better is that Peyton Leutner, who is the victim, although she suffered horrific danger to her body through those 19 stab wounds, she's made a really amazing recovery. And she was discharged just 7 days after the attack. She returned to school in September of 2014. And as of 2019, she was wanting to pursue a career in medicine. She has also continued to speak on the lasting impact of the attack, including issues of trauma and the physical presence of the scars. So wishing her all of the healing and success that there can be. That would be great.
Yeah. What an amazing human. Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for weeding through all of that. A lot of that can get confusing with the different, defenses just when these girls were starting, the trial phase. And then it's been interesting to really kind of follow the information that's come out about their mental health, the release. But I understand that, we've talked a lot about privacy for people and like, do we have the right to know that sort of stuff? But, obviously in the interest of the community, and if one is released back in the community and another one is looking like it's going to, of course, that's going to be all public court hearings, and they're now over age. So yeah, interesting to follow. Well, with that, I'm glad we have a whole half hour left because we have another cult in California. I mean, come on, California. Like, the cult thing is so 1960s, right? Like, what are we doing? But I think we're upping our game here in the Golden State because this has been described as a transgender, vegan, anti-artificial intelligence murder cult. So take that, Manson family. Come up with a better name. Let's go.
So how long ago did you hear about this?
Gosh, whenever I sent you that text, because our friend, retired police officer, Jim, I'll say that, sent it to me and was like, what is going on? And I'm like, I don't even have time to look into this. And I looked into it a little bit and sent it to you. And you were like, oh yeah, this is wild.
I think I was at lunch during work one day, and it was maybe about a month, maybe 5 weeks ago. and I was at a charging station, kind of scarfing down lunch, charging my car, and I was flipping through my phone, and it came up, and it had that same list of descriptors that you had. I was like, what the farg is this? This can't be real. And then the more I read into it, and it was actually really like, it's bad. And these are some very, very dangerous people.
Absolutely. So I'll kind of take you guys through the story here, which made sense to me and sort of sketching this out today. But this Bay Area group, cult, whatever you want to call it, is known as Zizians. And it's led by an individual named Jack Ziz Lasota. And in August of 2022, Lasota, an eccentric computer programmer and blogger who had started going by the name Ziz, that's Z-I-Z, and who had adopted female pronouns, reportedly fell out of a boat into the San Francisco Bay, where rescue crews searched, the whole shebang, air, sea, never found a body, which is not uncommon for those very rough, shark-infested, freezing cold waters. I mean,
that's why Alcatraz is there.
That's why Alcatraz is there. Yes, that's why there, aside from the fall, aren't very many survivors when people die by suicide off the Golden State Bridge. So we have this incident happen with this person, and then nearly 5 months later, Lasota shows up at a motel in Philadelphia. They were found by police after the elderly parents of a woman whom they were close to were found shot to death. And this would be one in a string of murders linked to Lasota or Ziz, but Lasota has never been charged with anything related to these murders. So again, kind of Manson-esque, right? Because he didn't actually follow through with any of the murders, was just sort of orchestrating this. So let's back up a little bit. Lasota had earned an undergraduate degree in computer science for the University of Alaska Fairbanks, interned with NASA, and then went on to develop a puzzle game called Dithesy, I don't know.
Dystheism.
Dystheism.
Yeah, I'm looking up the game now. It's like back from 2016.
So it's a term that means that God isn't totally holy. You could even think of God as evil in some sense, just to kind of give you an idea of like.
So here's a description of the game. Yeah. Dystheism is a puzzle Metroidvania. Have no idea what that means. About exploring an afterlife that is out to kill you.
All right.
So yeah, it won a huge competition. That's a pretty creative idea.
Sure.
For a game.
Sure,
yeah.
For sure. So this was all before Ziz moved to the Bay Area in 2016 to then start working in, of course, the tech industry, right? So the Zizians have been described as a pretty small group of very well-educated computer whizzes. They are devout vegans who have splintered away from this Berkeley-centric subculture called rationalism that seeks to understand human cognition and is concerned that artificial intelligence could destroy humanity. So, of course, this is happening in Berkeley, right? But yeah, even being part of that group, they splintered off, of course, in a more extreme version. So they splinter off, and then in 2019, they sort of staged this protest in Sonoma County where 4 of them, including Lasota, end up getting arrested when this group wouldn't leave. They were actually blocking the exits of this big, not like a state park, but something similar, and like forcibly handing out flyers to people with their ideologies. They were wearing black hooded robes and masks and being a little bit forceful, and then of course trespassing at some point. So they were arrested. So during the court processes, these 4 defendants are just kind of working the system in like a paper terrorism sort of way that we see like with sovereign citizens. They made bail because Lasota's parents bailed them all out, and they go through numerous attorneys. They only wanted attorneys that were vegan. They pushed to have judges dismissed. They were requesting changes of venue. They were hurling accusations of transphobia against the court, just completely drugged this out for like 3 years. So this is, after they're dragging this out for 3 years, this brings us to the point where Lasota goes missing on the boat conveniently, right? So when she goes missing on the boat, it's her sister and one of the co-defendants that were present that claim that they witnessed her go overboard and that they're trying to, like, you know, keep an eye on her while they're looking for a life vest and all of this stuff. And eventually she disappears and they end up calling for help. Weeks later, after the supposed drowning, that witness that was there, not the sister, but the other witness and co-defendant, ends up being killed when he and another co-defendant in the protest case attempt to kill their landlord with samurai swords in Vallejo, California. They've now sort of relocated down to Southern California for a bit, living out of like a trailer truck, like the box part of a trailer truck, on this property that this elderly man was renting out to them. And he basically gets hit over the head, wakes up, and he has been stabbed multiple times. Like his eye has been stabbed out. He has cuts on the back of his neck, and he has a gun, and he defends his life and shoots and kills one of these defendants while he was being attacked. So that brings us, if you're still with me, back to January 2nd of 2023, when the Pennsylvania State Troopers respond to a home in Chester Heights for a welfare check on a couple. And inside, they find the bodies of Richard Zachko and his wife, Rita. They're 72 years old and 69 years old. And the investigators determine that they are the parents of a woman named Michelle. And Michelle is an associate of Lasota's. So you have Lasota completely connected to all of these killings. And this is when they go to look for Michelle at that motel and they find Lasota. And Lasota's like slumped down in a bathroom pretending to be dead.
Oh.
Just like, I'll close my eyes and lie here and be unresponsive, and they'll just like leave me alone, right? So then on January 16th of this year, that elderly landlord who had been attacked by the group of cult members, if we will, was grabbed by a man on his property, stabbed to death in the chest. The man actually returns and slits his throat to make sure he was dead, all while the trial against his attackers were pending. So Solano County prosecutors end up charging Maximilian Snyder, a 22-year-old affiliated with this fringe group, with killing this elderly man in an attempt to silence him as a witness against his friends and fellow cult members. 3 days after this man was fatally stabbed, on the afternoon of January 20th, so again, we're just talking nearly 2 months ago now, federal agents on a highway near the Canadian border, now in Vermont, pull over a blue Prius. They'd kind of been watching it for a while. The occupants of the car had been hanging out at a motel, and people were like, they're kind of sketchy. They're dressed weird. They're like taking stuff in.
They're all wearing hooded robes. I think that would be.
Yes.
Just
even
wandering
for a motel,
in and out,
like this is sketchy.
Yeah.
Bringing stuff in and out of the car, like some weapons were seen. They were even just like wearing like holsters on the outside of their clothing. And I don't know for sure, but I would not think that Vermont is an open carry state. So I'm going to say that that was concerning to folks. But what they do is they pull over this Prius, and there are two people inside the car. We have Felix, who went by Ophelia Buchholz, who is a German national and a quantitative trader, which I don't even know what that means. Do you know what that means?
Sounds something like Bitcoin to me.
Magic beans?
Yes.
A magic bean
beans.
trader?
Magic beans.
Right. So Felix, or Ophelia, was one person in the car. And then Teresa Youngblood was a 21-year-old computer science student. So she, interestingly, had recently applied for a driver's license in Washington State and was the fiance of Snyder, the guy who murdered the elderly man to keep him from testifying, because they had gone to some very elite, wealthy private high school in Seattle together. And I guess we're planning on getting married or something, some part of their scheme. I don't know. Anyway, they get stopped on the highway by Border Patrol. Youngblood pulls out a handgun, fires at the border agents. They return fire. There's a complete firefight here. Both Buckholt and U.S. Border Patrol agent David Mayland were killed during the shootout. Youngblood was injured, and then that led to her arrest. It wasn't fatal. After everything settled down, they search the vehicle. They find tons of stuff, right? Tactical gear, ballistic helmets, night vision, like face respirators, two-way radios, a cache of hollow point bullets. And then they have Youngblood's journal, which had, they said, a lot of cipher text in it, kind of writings and musings about
code, yeah,
different things in code, including some psychedelic experiences.
There you go. Gallifrey was saying that.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, what is she smoking? Right.
Yeah. So that's where things kind of stand right now. Again, Lesotho has not been accused of any of the crimes in connection with the deaths. When they were found in the motel, and I'm not sure if Michelle, the daughter of the people who were killed, was ever found, but Lesotho was, I think, arrested and charged with like obstruction of justice and a couple of other things peripheral. So it's interesting, you know, I kind of started out like making fun of cults in the 60s, but yeah, I mean, it does, there or she is at the center of all of these people that are doing these things in the name of a pretty extreme ideology and causing chaos. So, and I think it's, you know, you and I were just talking earlier today when we were recording about Ted Kaczynski and these uber smart people that are picking up on things that, yes, in our society could be really scary to think about. And, you know, where are things going? But choose these really extreme and violent means to try and get their point across or get their ideology to move forward. And it's like, never has it once turned out to be like the thing that gets people to go like, oh yeah, we should slow down with artificial intelligence or what have you.
Yeah, but then how do you compare that to one of the things that we mentioned in the episode, which is about Luigi, right? Like, I mean, if Luigi had been a little more crazy and a little less camera friendly, he may not have the following. I mean, it's also like this was one gesture as opposed to sort of an organized. I mean, it's interesting because I'm not condoning violence. I'm just not. But like, if you're really that concerned about the prevalence of AI and how it may affect the future of humanity, why are you taking any time to go after, you know, innocent old people,
right,
you know, that were supporting you? This sounds a lot more psychopathic, you know?
Yeah.
So,
I don't know.
Tragic that people lost their lives, law enforcement, the elderly couple. It's very sad.
Yeah, definitely. Akiko asked, where's the line between extreme ideology and batshit crazy? And hey, we talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
You have a lot of researchers and subject matter experts trying to make that differentiation in a professional manner as far as terminology goes. But
well, I think it's about also, I think that brings up a really good discussion point is the idea of passion. Like, where does your passion lie? Is your passion about the betterment of society? There's an influencer out there, and I just refuse to know his name. And he's another like camera friendly guy with like a gorgeous head of hair, hipster man bun, and, you know, like a beautifully sculpted beard. And he's like, at first you just think like, oh my God, this guy could be a cult leader because he's so charming, so handsome. And then he starts talking about not believing in sunscreen.
Oh,
and
that
you
guy.
you should ground yourself in the stream, you know, make sure that your feet are touching mud while you look directly at the sun.
Yeah,
And
do
like
it.
just crazy stuff. But he's got followers, right? And because he has a presence, you know,
he's a
and there are
wellness
other people.
influencer.
Yes, that's it, the wellness influencers.
Oh,
So
yeah.
again, I think it's about passion, but when the passion is driven by not looking at the bigger picture of looking at the broken structure, it's like first order change. Like a lot of people think that, well, if I just do this, then that's going to fix the whole thing. It's like, no, you have to go run for office and start doing some work in that way, right?
Yeah, definitely. you had some celebrity feud gossip gone wild.
Well, I find this so interesting. I don't know if anybody else would find this interesting at all, but
We got to have an entertainment segment. Why not?
yeah. So if anybody's out there following, I guess the reason this came up for me this morning as we were prepping for this episode is that there is an influencer out there who is very energetic, and he is covering, and he's getting a lot of followers for his coverage with no listed sources. Like, people are saying, and this has been reported, but he's not giving any of that stuff. It's all about the Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni feud.
Thing.
Right, it's pretty ugly. So the reason I wanted to bring this up is because I think one thing about it is important, and we've talked about this in other episodes, but first of all, I'm not justifying any bad behavior. I'm not expecting celebrities to be nice to everybody, because that's fucking exhausting, right?
Yeah,
like, you're living your entire life on a stage and you're scrutinized. Everything you do is scrutinized and misinterpreted. But at the same time, if you really want to be successful, you probably should do your best to like get along with people and maybe fake being nice. But I think that it's different for men and women. I mean, it's not that I think, it absolutely is men and women. You know, the Harvey Weinstein revelations have shown just how much women have been under the thumb of the studio system and really toxic guys in the industry. So just to get everybody up to speed on this, is the legal feud between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni stems out of them both being co-stars of this film called It Ends With Us. And it's escalated into this really highly publicized dispute with like people taking sides, and it's just amped up by content creators on social media platforms. So the movie is about a very, very torrid, passionate relationship, and it is Justin's film. Like, this is something that he co-wrote, he adapted, he's producing it. And he's not a big name, but he is a very talented actor, as is Blake Lively. She's very talented. But there were problems from the start. There were problems on both sides. And one was, that has been allegedly confirmed, is that really Justin was in over his head. Like, he really didn't understand not only how the ins and outs of producing a film while starring in it, but also working with someone who is a big star. Maybe Blake doesn't do the enormous movies that her husband Ryan Reynolds does, but she's a celebrity of renown, and she's been around for a while. So the origins of the feud is that in December 2024, Lively filed a complaint with California Civil Rights Department accusing him of creating a hostile work environment through inappropriate sexual comments and unsolicited improvisation of intimate scenes during filming. I have no idea what the truth of that is, but it is a completely different world in the industry right now. And you don't do anything without an intimacy coordinator. And every single step is plotted out. That is the way it should be. And it's never been that way before. Frank Langella had to leave Fall of House of Usher, which is a wonderful series on Netflix. They were 3/4 of the way through that series and had to refilm the whole thing with another actor because he... You know, and he's an older guy. He's from a different generation. And he didn't say, I'm so sorry, I need to learn to be better. He doubled down and got angry at the actress for not liking what he was doing.
Holding a boundary.
Right, holding an appropriate boundary. So going back to this particular incident, Baldoni has a counterclaim. He's actually filing a $400 million lawsuit against her and Ryan Reynolds and their publicist, Leslie Sloan, alleging defamation, civil extortion, invasion of privacy, and he claimed that Lively is attempting to gain creative control over the film and was engaging in a smear campaign to tarnish his reputation. Interestingly enough, who knows where the truth is in this, is like, that publicist is like, I'm out of here. Like, she's like, get me out of here. Like, I'm not going to deal with this anymore. But there is back and forth. And like some of the things now, one of the big questions is, how did Blake Lively get her hands on Justin's private texts to his publicist? And some of the texts are very inappropriate. Like, they're very angry. They use terms like, while they're not explicit about violence, they are implicit about ruining someone's career. Now, were those said in anger? Maybe. How fucking stupid is it to put that in electronic communication? Like, that's not smart at all. Although I understand that a lot of PR people will, like, they're doing everything they can to keep their client happy. So I find this fascinating for a number of reasons. I know that there are a couple of actresses that you do not like from the day we met, you've rolled your eyes about them. And Blake Lively seems to be another actress that is sort of, nobody's neutral about her. They either really like her or they don't like her. I don't really have any opinion of her. I've seen a couple of things that she's done. I thought that's great as a performer, but she is, for some reason, is polarizing. But I find that fascinating because I really had to learn a lesson for an actress that I don't particularly care for, who is Katherine Heigl. I think that she's very talented. I've loved her in things, but there's just something about her that I don't like. And then I have to go, well, why do I not like it? Is it because of the Grey's Anatomy thing? Do I have that feeling about her because she was painted to be such a horrible person? And now, all these years later, people are coming forward and going, no, she was absolutely right. And she was trying her best to be professional. She was stating things that the whole crew knew, but they were all living in fear because they were all newbies on a hit show.
So what was the controversy with her? Like, what was she trying to stand up for on that
Katherine
show?
Heigl?
Yeah.
So back in the day, in those first few seasons, she was really pissed off about the work schedule. And, it is true that, people think actors have it really easy. If you're on a hit show, especially a single camera show, not a multi-camera, like a half-hour comedy, which is really only 23 minutes, if 23 minutes of production, when you're on an hour drama, which is about 45 minutes, there's a lot going on, and you will be there sometimes for 18-hour days, and it's exhausting. And she just kind of pointed it out, hey, this is my understanding. I'm going to paraphrase some of the things that I read, is that she was saying, if we organize this better, if we organize this schedule better, then people could da-da-da. And everybody just turned on her. And she was a little salty too, rightfully so, that she didn't get support from her fellow cast members at the time.
Right.
But now, it's all these years later and she's come back. So I'm just using that as an example of where I can have insight into my own shortcomings about here I am, how much was I affected by the media that was put out about her?
Yeah.
So now going back to Blake Lively, there was a whole bunch of interactions between her and Anna Kendrick on the movie they shared together. And it was problematic because they were not getting along on the press tour. Now, Anna Kendrick herself has a reputation. Both of them have reputations. But I just think it's so important in moments like this to really look at ourselves. And this is where it's so directly connected to clinical work. These are actors portraying roles, and they are also human beings. So stop holding them to standards of what you expect them to be or you need them to be for your own satisfaction. You have probably a sister-in-law or a brother-in-law that you roll your eyes about sitting down at the table with them at Thanksgiving. Oh my God, I got to put up with this Yahoo.
Yeah.
Right. So extend that to people that are in these positions. Ellen DeGeneres, they have really taken her down as how mean she is. It's she was running a fucking multi-million-dollar empire, employing all these people. Think about the stress that includes. Does it justify being mean to people? It absolutely does not justify being mean. But then what's the objective truth in those situations? What really went down? Does she really have a bowl of gum outside her desk that you're required to chew gum before you come in the office? Right?
Oh my gosh.
I find these kind of things really fascinating because it is so much akin to human behavior. And I think that the ills and the criticisms that we throw at people in those positions are really a reflection of who we are. Maybe it's a reflection of our inability to process information and give people some grace.
Yeah.
Or our own shortcomings. So I just I find it fascinating. I wish them all the best, all of them. They're all talented.
Bless their hearts.
Bless their hearts. I wish they could get along. But I will say that, if you're ever angry, do not fucking put anything in a text. Do not put stuff in text. You got to breathe before you leave that voicemail, as if anybody leaves voicemails anymore. Before you write that email, write a draft or write it in Word, then go away for an hour.
There you go. Put it in your notes. Set it aside. Yeah. Well, thank you for the work you did and talking about this because
that's no work.
I found it exhausting.
I eat this stuff up completely.
I found this whole thing exhausting because it just went back and forth. And I felt, this will like tie into the episode that precedes what we're doing right now when it drops on the feed, episode 204. But, and talking about social media, I was just exhausted about the back and forth, how things were being painted. And then to think that the PR people were being probably involved in, some of the painting. At some point, I was just like, I had to tap out. Like, I can't give any more attention to this. But I found it really gross, like the accusations of, him being very obsessed with like, her being a new mom and breastfeeding, and then like the birth scene in the movie. And then he brings in his buddy to play the doctor who's like down between her legs. And then you go and you see Justin Baldoni's TED talk that he does about his journey to feminism. And I was like, I can't. Like, all these people are probably trash. I gotta go.
I know. And I'm glad you went there because I didn't want to go. I was trying to hold back from going there. But like, there's something to me that is, oh God, now I'm falling into it as well. I'm not actually, I'm gonna have a little bit of restraint. But let me say this is that if anybody saw Deadpool 2, even if you're not a Marvel fan, it's a pretty hysterical movie.
Oh, Deadpool's great. Yeah.
It's funny. I mean, it's certainly my sense of humor. And I love Ryan Reynolds. I also think that there's like there may be a streak of Canadian sociopathy in him,
but
I think he's wildly, wildly funny. But the idea that Justin got so destroyed by the Nice Pool character. So we don't know if Nice Pool was actually based on Justin.
Interesting.
It's a guy in a man bun and he's really nice and he does send like these weird convoluted messages about what's appropriate. I think it's hysterical, but the idea that you're getting pissed off about it, like I didn't even make that connection until you brought it up. And now
thanks for your insecurity. And just crazy stuff. Oh my gosh. You guys, we're just going to stop this podcast and just start a pop culture dishing podcast. As if there aren't a gajillion of those as well, right?
I know.
Why not just enter another oversaturated market? Oh, man. This was fun. It was good to revisit some of those things and just talk about what's been going on in true crime. Plenty more than this, but man, you guys, we only got an hour to do this. So with that, what else? It's been so good to like see everybody in the chat too. Abby
is so hilarious. She's like, you're going to give Scott more grays. I'm like, oh my God, that is. You're just getting me all worked up.
That's my job. That is my job to give him grays. But
you're like the best partner ever.
Aw, thank you. Fantastic. Well, thank you guys for sticking with us. I hope you enjoyed something a little different than our interviews, but we will be back with more interviews, like we said, in the next few months and beyond. So please join us if you can live for these. We don't do them on a specific Saturday. We have to kind of work with our guests and work with our schedules, but stay tuned to all of our social media. Our Linktree is a great place to go because that always has updated which Behind the Couch is next and, what day you can catch that, and has the link right to the YouTube page. But we have it streaming on YouTube and streaming on Facebook for now. So look forward to the next one. Actually, I have it in my brain. It will be April 5th. And we will see you guys next time on LA
Not So
Confidential. Bye.
Bye, folks. Thank you. It was fun.
Thanks.
Bye.
We sincerely thank you for spending some time with us today. LA Not So Confidential is part of the Crawlspace Media Network. Each episode is hosted, produced, and written by Dr. Scott and Dr. Shiloh. Our post-production editing and sweetening magic is handled by the multi-talented Jason Usry of Ear Cult Productions.
Our theme music, entitled Cool Vibes Film Noir, is composed and performed by the talented Kevin MacLeod. He graciously allows us to use his music via a Creative Commons Attribution license. Please check out all of Kevin's amazing work on YouTube.
All of the resources for each episode can be found on our website at la-not-so-confidential.com. You can find us on Instagram at LA Not So Podcast, on X at LA Not So Pod, and on Facebook at LA Not So Confidential. Media inquiries and bookings are scheduled at alienistentertainment@gmail.com.
Once a month, we go live on YouTube on Saturday afternoon. So pay attention to our social media announcements to join our interactive broadcast entitled Behind the Couch, where we interview guests on a number of psych, criminal justice, and true crime topics.
And lastly, we'd be honored if you joined our Patreon at patreon.com/LA Not So Podcast. With a subscription, you get an ad-free listening experience, additional content, host interaction, and you'll be the first to know about upcoming live events, social gatherings, and super cool swag.
Thanks for listening, and join us next time on LA
Not So
Confidential.